time for a warm-up. How's everybody doing this morning? It's very early here. Stand by. We're going to be using the power hammer here in a minute after I get some of these drawer pulls. Forged up. So busy around here, and I'm having a heck of a time trying to keep up. Getting the forge full of these, we're going to have to move to the next step here in a minute. Running out of room with the forge. How's everybody doing this morning? Or wherever time it is where you're at. It's quite early here. Greetings, greetings. Where's everybody from? What's everybody doing? Thanks for the 2 likes. I appreciate that. Just about got these down with the hand forging component of this. Then we're going to move to the power hammer. Just doing a little near side offset. Kentucky. I was a farrier for almost 25 years. Well, If you want to stay in shape, this is a good thing to do. If you have an arty bend, you're a little arty, this is a good thing to do. Learn how to weld, get some tools, join your local blacksmith club, go get a little taste of it. Get a little taste of it. This is a wide open deal, and there's so many little paths you can take doing this blacksmithing. This is the old school component of this, but in a minute you're going to see the new school component of it here when I get these done. Yeah, it's all right. You can always learn it. There's apprenticeships and junior colleges that teach welding every day. If you join a blacksmithing organization in where you're at, there's probably somebody looking for an apprentice. Yeah. You got to be a little bit good at everything. You got to be good at marketing. You got to be good at the art. You got to have a little bit of a business mind. It's never monotonous because about the time I do 1,000 of something and I'm so sick of them I don't ever want to do them again, I'm rolled on to the next thing. So these are going to be drawer pulls. And I'm going to show you how I forge those in the power hammer here in a minute. Thanks for the likes, everybody. This live stream is brought to you by Cody Iron Works, which is my company. And then we're going to be working on some more of these later. These are hat racks. But we're going to fire up this power hammer here in a minute, and you're going to see the big thumper going, which I don't do on the live streams very often because it's loud. I've got 2 more of these to finish, and then we'll fire up the power hammer. finish that last one up, and then I'll swing the camera around, and you guys will be able to watch me do the power hammer. It's fairly impressive. So, good morning, everybody. Thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. Yeah, it doesn't get more manly man stuff than this. And it gives you can be a little bit of a blacksmith, you can be a little bit of a welder, you can be a little bit of a mountain man, you can be a little bit of a gunsmith, you can be a little bit of a jewelry guy. There is many, many things you can do with this, because I do everything from jewelry. To arrowheads, flint strikers. I make so many different things. Yeah. Jack of all trades. All right, now we're going to switch over to the power hammer for a minute. Find the tong I want. You guys will get a kick out of this. So here's the power hammer. This is a KA-75 hammer made in Postville, Wisconsin. Iron. And there's the finished drawer pull, at least the finished forging of the drawer pull. Bring this up here a little closer so you can see it. If I was doing a big bunch of these, I'd move the forge and set it up, but I'm only doing 12, so. holes. Thanks for the likes, everybody. Yeah, no gloves. So while that compressor is filling back up and charging, I'll come back over here and we'll do a little forging. It'll take a second for the compressor to catch back up. That's back plates. How's everybody doing this morning? Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in and watching my lives. Thanks for the likes and the hearts. And I'm a one-man operation around here. And it isn't getting any easier as I get older. Hello. Good morning. Where's everybody from? This little morning live stream was brought to you by me and coffee and a cheap cigar. You have any questions, comments, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer if I can. just gives that a nice, it just gives a nice Boston. Oh my goodness. Want to make me a mace? So that's pretty easy. It helps if you have a welder. Grandfather owned the foundry. I used to go there with my father when I was like 10, fire up furnace. Yeah, but I got to tell you, there, as a species, we're designed to do physical work. And I believe that the worst thing that ever happened to humanity is when we all got to sitting around in a chair and looking at a screen all the time. Um, I've had a very physical life. I trained horses and shod horses and blacksmithed. I'm 53 years old and I ain't in bad shape for the shape that I'm in. So there you go. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear it or not, but that compressor shut off. So the air hammer, of course, it sucks air and it's run by the compressor. I've got two big tanks, but it takes a little bit to charge up the compressor in between. So when I'm forging like this, instead of working the compressor so hard, I'll kind of flip back and forth between work. And that way I'm not working the compressor quite so hard. And this compressor is 20 years old. So that's it's got some, and it's been worked pretty hard. So, but now you're going to get to see me do some. Yep. The irony does not escape me that there's a whole group of people in this country who pay to go to a gym and work out and do labor and pay for the privilege of doing it. When actually you could go someplace and chop some wood or shovel a hole or dig a ditch, and you would get paid for it, and it would be really good physically for you. And that has happened in 2 generations in this country. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, it used to be you'd send your kids to a farm, your cousin's farm or something, and make them go help bale hay or put up hay all summer long. Oh, times have changed. money you spend on a gym every year would buy this tool. And then you could actually make something that would bring you in income instead of cost you. Yeah, me too. So I have a son. My son is 20 years old. He started running equipment when he was 16. He kind of apprenticed with a family friend. So now at 20 years old, he can run an excavator, a bulldozer, wheel loader. He's working for a huge company here in Cody that is a national company, and he is pretty much second in command, running a giant multi-million-dollar crushing machine for making gravel. And he's making I think he's making $27 or $28 an hour at 20 years old with no college degree. I don't know too many college graduates who are getting out of college and stepping into a 30 to and then he gets 401k retirement. He's 401k retirement and health insurance at 20 years old. So I have no doubt. I have no doubt that in the next 2 or 3 years, he'll probably have a crew of his own and he'll be running his own crew because he's motivated. He shows up on time. He stays late. He puts in just a little bit more effort, and it's going to pay off for him in the end. So I'm pretty proud of it. Thanks for coming in, everybody. So that's the last of the drawer pulls. Those are made out of horseshoes. That's the end of the forging process. Now I'll have to finish them. So lately here, he found himself a 1958 motor grader. And he's buying this motor grader for scrap price. So he's going to pay $1,500 for this motor grader. And in his spare time, he's going to build it, and he's going to have a side hustle. And his side hustle might make him more money than his job. So, and he's going to learn how to rebuild a motor grader. I'm in Cody, Wyoming. and he loves it. He loves the work. He loves working on the machines. He loves. I mean, he's been fascinated with big machines since he was a kid. So it works for him. He's got a very fulfilling job. He's got a fiance. He's at 20 years old. I think he's going to probably get married the next year or two. They're building a life together. So I'm pretty proud of him. Sure. Uh, Let me go turn that forge down a little bit. So there's a lot of different kinds of steel, hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of steel. Most steel that you come across in buildings is a structural grade steel. These horseshoes are made out of about the same stuff. They don't have much carbon in them, and they don't have any manganese or carbon or all the things that make steel special. This kind of steel doesn't really have it. And so you could heat this horseshoe up and quench it and heat it and quench it and heat it and quench it, and it isn't going to get hard because it doesn't have the elements in it that require it to be hard. But for things like tools, like things that have to be have an edge and hold it sharp, or things that need to be durable, like springs. This piece of sucker rod out of an oil well. This is a higher quality of steel. And it has some elements in it, like horseshoeing rasps and stuff like that, that allow them to get hard so they'll maintain an edge. Okay? But the thing is, you can't, if it's hard, like a rasp or tool steel, when it's in its hardened state, you can't drill it. You can't cut it with like a saw. So what you have to do is you have to heat it up to where it's above the critical temperature. And generally for most steels, the critical temperature is when it becomes non-magnetic. So when you heat this steel up, and I'll show you. When you heat this steel up, it becomes to a place where it's not magnetic anymore. Okay? Now watch what happens when this cools down. We'll cool this down a little bit. And right there, it's starting to get magnetic. See? So the difference is a couple hundred degrees, and now all of a sudden, you see how the colors left it. It's getting a little darker. It's a cherry red now. And see, as it cools down, it gets more magnetic and more magnetic. Okay? So when I'm building these knives out of a file, what I do before I do anything with it is I put it in the forge and I heat it up to where the magnet won't stick to it. And then I cool it off very slowly. I either put it in an insulation called vermiculite, or I put it in a forge and I close up the forge, and it'll take 8 or 10 hours for that piece of steel to cool down. And then you can cut it, drill it, punch it. You can do whatever you need to do. So I forge them up. I drill the holes in them. I get them ready to be knives. Or chisels or punches, because I make all my own tools. So these are the little center punches that I make. These are made out of truck spring. But here's where the art part of this comes in. I want this part of this chisel to be hard. So I want this part to be hard, but I don't want this part to be hard. So you have to sequentially harden and temper that. So if you want a piece of steel as hard as it will be, what you do is you heat it up above critical temperature and then you quench it. And generally, if you want it as, and it depends on the steel because every steel is a little different. But if you want it as hard as it can be, this particular kind of steel, which is probably a 5160 or something very close, this was truck spring. You quench it in water. And what that does is all that crystalline structure in that steel, it freezes. And it gets very hard, but it also gets very brittle. So I don't want it brittle, I want it tough. So it needs to be able to hold that edge, but I don't want it so tough that when I hit it, it breaks. Now you can go watch some of my short videos, and I've got some very dramatic videos on the short video side that show this and demonstrate this. So then what you do, so now you've quenched that off, it's as hard as it will get. So then what I do is I heat it back up just enough to take some of the hardness out of this. So I can actually adjust the hardness with heat on this particular steel. Now all the steels are a little different. Some of them are air quenching, some of them are oil quench steels, some of them are a salt water quenched steel. There's I don't know, at least 300 different kinds of steel out there, and not counting stainless. Well, yeah, but you got to get it very hot. Like that steel right there is probably 1400 degrees, 14 or 1600 degrees. But you can go watch my other videos. I've covered this a lot on my videos. So you can go back and watch my videos on my channel. And I explain a lot about this. I do a really dramatic short video where I bust a rasp over this anvil. That's pretty cool. So something like this tool, you know, where I'm hammering it and it's underneath the power hammer and I'm using it hard. I want it hard. I want it durable, but I don't want it to be brittle. And so I've taken some of the hardness out of this hammerhead. I've tempered it back and softened it up a little bit. So. See, just like the block on this. So this part of this block is just mild steel, but I welded a face on it that's a piece of light truck spring, and I tempered it back a little bit so it's not quite so hard, but it's very, very durable. That's been on there 5 years, and I've done thousands of these. So I hope that helps explain what I'm doing there a little bit. Permanent magnet motors. Something I've never, I have a little bit of a concept of it, but I don't totally understand it. I imagine that you can get a motor spinning fast enough that it gets enough heat that it'll affect the magnetism. And you can see that this little forge right here, I can get it high and I can get it hot enough to affect the magnetism. And you can watch as it cools down how it affects the magnet. Actually, it affects it sticking. So I totally could see that on a motor that's spinning. What's the average motor go? What, 3,000 RPMs or something? So yeah. Yeah, Tesla was a goat, man. That guy was too smart. You can be too smart, and he was. I think we got some people now that are a little too smart. I think Elon Musk might be just a little too smart. He might end up like Tesla in his old age. A little. Yeah. So anyway, greetings everybody. Welcome to Cody Iron Works. If you like the content, subscribe. If you want to support, go to the Cody Iron Works Etsy store and buy a boot jack or something. But there's all kinds of steel. I mean, there are so many different kinds. Like this is a little scribe that I made. I use it for doing engraving. And that, I'm going to tell you something. That piece of steel is maybe the toughest piece of steel I have ever worked. And what that is that is the stem out of an engine valve. So it had a little mushroom head on it originally, and it goes in the engine and goes up and down and seals the valves off in the engine. That is the toughest damn steel I have ever worked. But it makes amazing tools because you can't hardly forge it. You can't hardly get it hot enough to forge it. So, and believe me, I've tried. Well, I know that, like some of those motors, they have on the shaft of motor, they actually have a fan built into them, right? And it sucks the air through the motor. So to help cool them. That's about all I know about it. Because, I'm running a hammer. What I do for a living is I bang shit together. So sup? Toiling away here this morning. At mill scale or forged scale, it creates a good protection on this. And in this country, we're really dry here, and so you could almost set that out, and it'll keep that metal from rusting because it gets that oxide coating on it. But what I do is after I let that go like that, I'll brush the real heavy scale off of it, and then I'll hit it with some linseed oil, and that keeps them from rusting. Woo. All right, that's everything I got prepped. So now we're going to finish some stuff that I did yesterday, and I'm going to show you the process. You guys will get a kick out of this. This is, yeah, it works out pretty nice. And the reason I started doing that is because, you know, it's hard to get all of your nail when you're doing 3 holes in a row. No matter how careful you are, it's pretty hard to get them all exactly straight. And if you put a real dramatic edge around that, you scallop that edge up, it tricks your eye, so you can't tell. It's harder to tell if those holes are in line or not. And that's actually why I started doing it. So this is stuff that I've done yesterday. I'm going to put it in this toaster oven. We're going to heat it up to about 100, 250 degrees, and then we're going to put the linseed oil on it. Yeah, exactly. I'll show you. So here's the back, and they look like they're fairly, and I get them as close as I can, right? But the scallops, if you're off just a little bit, the scallops hide that. If there's a little bit of, if you're a little wonky. This one I didn't finish. I got to put a hook in it. So here's a finished one. So when you get the linseed oil on them, that's what they look like. And we're going to go put some hooks on these. I'm going to grab some of these up. We're going to put some hooks on these. This morning, go ahead and finish these. The reason these are so expensive, I'm getting over $50 a piece for these now. You can see how much work goes into them. I mean, there's a lot of work in these. And the bad part is the shipping. My shipping cost has doubled in the last couple of years. And so that makes it really, really challenging. You know, it's my material cost has gone up too, but what's really expensive is the damn shipping has gone up so much. So if you've watched my live streams before, you've watched me make these hooks. It doesn't remove anything from the metal. All of these steels are designed to be heated. And so you're not removing anything from the steel. When the steel is produced in a foundry, they put all the stuff in it. And the only way you're going to get it hot enough to remove anything from the steel is to heat it up to where it changes from a solid to a gas. And that's the only way you're going to get it hot enough to do that. I can do that. I have a forge hot enough to do that. A coal forge, my coke forge will turn a piece of steel into a sparkler. But with the general stuff that I'm doing here, it doesn't heat it up that much. Now, I ran out of my regular rivets, but because I am fairly ingenious, I just went down and bought some rivets at the farm and ranch store, but they're just a little too long, so I got to grind them down a little bit before I use them. And I'll use my 1958 Heller Brothers hammer. Tighten up the rivet, and there we go. Yeah. There are things that you want to temper that don't require an edge, like a spring. If you're making a spring, like think about the spring in a flintlock rifle. You've got to get the temper right in that. You want something that hardens, that will return to its shape over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and that requires a special kind of steel. A flint striker. So you can't make a flint striker out of a regular piece of mild steel. You have to have carbon steel to make a flint striker, because in order for that to shave and make a spark, it requires a specific type of steel to do that. But when you're just doing this stuff I'm doing here, this doesn't require any special steel. All my rivets out. This is just regular roll, and I know there's a number for it. They have a number for it, but I can't remember what it is. This is actually what a ball peen hammer was designed to do. The reason that this hammer is shaped like this is they were designed for setting rivets. But you can see how labor intensive those are. Brought to you by Cody Iron Works. Go buy a hat rack. Support the channel. Something like a 5160 or, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of steels out there. Some of them you want, they all have a little different. It's so complicated. It's above the pay grade of anybody working in this blacksmith shop. And who's working in this blacksmith shop is me. So. I mean, after all, I've only been doing it for 36 years or something. So I've got a long way to go to learn everything. Yeah, I've done a lot of work with different kinds of steel and been around a lot of people that I've had the opportunity to hang out with freaking metallurgists that work for NASA. And those guys are at a different level. But you have to be able to build your own tools when you're doing this job, because you can't go down to Ace Hardware and buy a heading tool that will work on this. And because I'm doing this really weird shape, my heading tool has to be really tall. And so this is a piece of steel that I don't even think it's hardened. I'm pretty sure this is just a piece of mild rod. I've never tried to harden it up, but I've done thousands. I've set thousands of these rivets on that tool, and it just goes to show how durable the steel is if you take care of it. If you don't abuse it. Well, yeah, and that's like with me. So I make tons and tons of knives out of horseshoe and rasp, and hundreds of knives a year out of horseshoe and rasp. And I got a process, and as long as I follow the same process every time, my knives turn out really good. And it took me years to get that process right where I was satisfied with the hardness of the knife and the durability of the knife. But the minute I throw something different in, like I've got some knives over here that I did out of some bastard files. And there was enough difference in the hardness of those bastard files from the horseshoe and rasps. They didn't turn out the same. And I had to go back and anneal everything. And now I'm going to have to harden the two things separately. So I'm going to have to do the file knives. I'm going to have to temper them differently than I do the rasp tubes. So we are always learning doing this job. But these hat racks that I'm doing right here, I've done over 3,000 of these hat racks in the last 10 years. So to say that I'm prolific is an understatement. But once I get them finished, they turn out pretty good. I actually got into this line of work by accident. I was blacksmithing. I've always been blacksmithing, and I've made stuff for myself when I was shoeing horses. I did my own tools and stuff. But I was training horses and helping my girlfriend at the time manage a hunter jumper barn down in Utah. Shout out to Justine. And I was shoeing all the horses in the barn. We had about 40 head of horses in the barn. And I had a lot of old horseshoes laying around. And I had made a lot of stuff with the horseshoes over the years. I probably made my first stuff out of horseshoes back in the mid 80s. And so one year for Christmas, for all of the clients in the barn, if you had one horse in the barn, I would take 6 of your horseshoes off of your horse and I'd make a Christmas wreath. I'd weld them into a Christmas wreath. And if you had 2 horses in the barn, because you had twice as many shoes, I made wine racks out of the horseshoes. And Christmas Eve, you know, like Santa Claus, Christmas Eve, I took everybody's gifts and I put them in front of their horses' stalls, hung them on the front of the stalls, put them in front of the horses' stalls. Well, Christmas Day shows up and all of a sudden I get a knock, a bang on the door. And one of the clients comes up and goes, she's got a Christmas wreath and she's got a wine rack. And she goes, "Can you make 100 of these?" And I said, "Shit, I can make 1,000 of those." Well, about a week later, she shows up at the barn with a purchase order from some Sundance catalog company. And that changed my life. I went on to be an artist in residence at Sundance, which allowed me to learn how to make jewelry and facilitated me getting a bunch of good tools. And I met my son's mom through that whole thing. And so it was a whole totally life-changing, that changed my life. Working for Robert Redford changed my life, and I owe it all to Anne. I actually went on to ride Robert Redford's horses, and I worked for a lot of very wealthy people over the years. It just kind of spawned into this thing. And now I'm here I am living in Cody, Wyoming, and it is not the same. It is not the same. Everything was an adventure in Park City, but we don't have that kind of life here in Cody. So my advice to young people is say yes a lot more. Don't say no, say yes. I said yes to that and I didn't have to. And it totally changed my life. I met some really interesting people. I know you guys aren't going to believe this. By looking at me today, you're not going to believe this, but there was a time in my life when I was sitting on a private jet plane, flying to five-star resorts, skiing every weekend. I was wearing a Rolex watch and eating at five-star restaurants every night. And I learned a lot. Here's a tip for you. Those people aren't any happier than you are. And some of them are more miserable. Did you hear my dinger go off? We gotta put the coating on the. We got to put the coating on the. I'll bring you over here. Sit you up over here. So I've got this vent set up. It's pretty rudimentary, but it works. So stand by. I'm going to go get those. Can you see that flashing off? So that linseed oil flashes off of those. They are very hot. About 250 degrees is what I generally put them at. Sometimes I go a little hotter because and that was just about almost too cool for them. Should have left them in for maybe a minute more. They weren't quite heated up as much as I usually like. But you can see that they're a lot of work. You'd never make a living building one of them at a time. You got to do a lot of them, but that's what they look like. And everyone is made like this. So, and I had some help in here that was helping me a little bit do this, but if you want to see them, Cody Iron Works is the Google. You can just Google Cody Iron Works and it'll come up. But I haven't really had a real job. I haven't had a real like worked for somebody else in any meaningful way. Well, my son is 20. I worked for the city part-time for a year, but as far as having a real like a job where there wasn't an end to it and I thought it was going to be my career, I don't know that I've ever had a job like that. other than shoeing horses and blacksmithing and training horses. Had a pretty great life, actually. Got a great son out of it. I was pretty mad at his mother for a long time, but I finally got over it, mostly. But I have a huge body of work that I have left behind. These are hanging in thousands of houses all over the United States. These are hanging my wine racks, and I did 1,800 wine racks for Sundance. So there's something to be said for that. And some people consider them to be kind of arty and they don't get thrown away. And they don't, I guarantee you don't wear them out. That'll last generations. There's that. I wish I was just a little more successful. There was some way I could make an extra $10,000 a year. It would be that would be very beneficial in my old age, where I could have a little retirement maybe one of these days. But it's probably not going to happen, and I don't worry about it too much. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for the likes, everybody. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for sticking around in the live stream. Learn from an old guy who's made a huge amount of mistakes in his life. I've done some things right, and I've made some huge mistakes. But that thing about doing what you love every day and you won't ever have a job, it's not exactly true, but there's something to be said for that. There is. There is something to be said for having that mentality. And money is not the key to your happiness. Surrounding yourself with quality people. I have strived my whole life, and being in Cody, it's harder. It was a lot easier down in Park City, because funny thing about smart people is they tend to be wealthy. I have strived to hang out with people who are smarter than me in hopes that I will learn from them. But of course, that takes a little self-awareness. And some people don't have it. But I've always really tried to find a group of friends that are smarter than I am. So on this one, I'm going to heat this up a little more. Turn this up a little bit. I'm going to pick it up. I don't think my oven actually reads true. So I'll kick that up a little higher. All right, so those are done. I got my forging done. We can come back around here. So if I was ever asked to give a commencement speech, like at high school, like they ask real successful people to come back and give the speech. Take care of your teeth, brush your teeth, um, hang out with people smarter than you, and put 10% of everything you make away. Here's the drawer pulls that we finished this morning. So you guys can see what I'm. Plasma welder. I've seen them, but I've seen them on YouTube and stuff, but I've never seen one in real life. I'll be curious to see how they work. Yeah. Yeah, well, the bad part about that is people are creatures of habit, and you get in the habit of hanging around with losers, and then you're stuck hanging around with losers. So that's how a lot of drug addictions start, and alcohol, and all of that stuff. You hang out with losers long enough, and you start being one. Got to get my cigar. Got to get my. Let me go grab a little bit more coffee. Stand by. When I moved to Park City, it was just really booming. It had just started a huge boom back in the late 90s when I moved there. And if you showed up to work on time, well, that's a good thing to learn on. My first welder was a Clark wire feed welder 35 years ago. And it taught me how to run a wire feed welder. So, and I think the quality of those welders from Vevor are a lot better than they used to be. I mean, I wouldn't want it for a production shop or anything, but to screw around with and see what you can do with it. Why wouldn't you spend $100? Shit, most people spend more than that on their subscriptions every month. Yeah. And if you have some skill, a small welder does a lot of work. All of this stuff in this shop was welded with a 110 stick welder. Everything in this shop has been welded, including this tool that I smash hard every day. So if you have some skill, it doesn't really matter as long as you know how to run the tool, and it gets enough amperage that you can get the heat up. So to get these, thanks for the likes, everybody. I really appreciate it. To get the holes in these even, what I have done is I've made some, what do they call them? They have a name for these marks. I've chiseled in some marks on this handle top, and I can set them on there. and I kind of set them in between the marks to where I think they look good. And then I take one of my fancy center punches that I make, and I just mark one hole. And then I have a tool when I go to drill these. I have a jig that I made up with a pin on it. So I just drill one hole and I slide it over there, and then they're all exactly the same, or as close to the same as I can get them in this blacksmith shop. I got a pretty good view. Sometimes I do really good on these, and sometimes my forging is a little off, but I did fairly good on these. Yeah, I've done a lot of welding with a Lincoln, one of those Lincoln tombstone welders, a ton. That's the first 500 wine racks I made. I made with an old Forney telephone operator adjusted amperage, where you pull the lead out and you change the amperage by moving the lead into a different hole. I really like this little ESAB I have now. I hope it lasts for a good long time. I don't want to have to replace it, because when I bought mine, it was $400, and the new ones are $800. They doubled in price. And I've got a Hobart wire feed in here, but I don't like it at all. I don't like the way it welds. Not for what I'm doing. It might work good for doing car restoration, fenders and stuff, but it doesn't work worth a darn for what I use it for. But can you feel the peace in the shop? When I have the forge off and the compressor's not going, it's just very zen in here, especially in the morning before everybody shows up. The great thing about working for yourself, the only person who can stress you out is you. And I get less stressed out as I get older. Witness marks. That was what I was thinking. Those are witness marks. I knew I'd pull it. Yeah. Took me a long time to get it set up this way. It hasn't always been serenity in my life. For a while there, I was deep in the chaos. Let's see. So that gets me set up for later when welding the next batch. Feng shui. A little feng shui. I don't know what time it is. The sun is just coming up here in Cody right now. It's just starting to get light. Of course, once you do one hat rack, then you do all kinds of hat racks. So here's the other ones that I do. So it must be almost 7 here. But these are the drawer pulls when they get finished. So I guess as long as my battery will last, I'll take you over here and yeah, we get a lot of sun here. You guys get a lot of that moisture, that stuff that falls out of the sky where you're at. We don't get a lot of that here. We get a lot of sunny days. We get over 300 sunny days a year in Wyoming. I think it's like 320, something like that. So here's my drill press, one of them. And here is my guide, my little gauge that I use. Very simple, doesn't take much. And I need one more clamp, stand by. Sometimes the simplest tooling is the best tooling. You'll get a kick how easy this is and how well it works. Yeah, we get a lot less snow here, actually, than when I was a kid. We had kind of a banner year for snow this year. We had one big storm. Which we only have once every 5 or 8 years now. Don't ever, ever, ever wear gloves and operate one of these machines. I'm going to say that again. Don't ever wear gloves operating one of these machines. I know a dozen men who've been seriously mauled by one of these. And this is a little one, and I've got a lot of slack in the belt, so it's not quite as dangerous. But you do not want to have a pair of gloves on and run one of these. And I've got this spinning pretty fast because I like to roll through this work. Ideally, you would have this slow down about half the speed that I have going. But we all got to live. You got to have an adventure somewhere in your life. And that's how you get them to where they're exactly, how the holes are always exactly the same. 4¼ inches center to center. I don't even have to measure them anymore. I've done them so much. I don't know how many of these I've done. Thousands of these. Takes about 30 or 34 to do a standard kitchen. Takes about 70 to do a whole house. Learn how to sharpen drill bits. That will help you in your career. Save you a lot of money. We got a lot of snow. We didn't get it till late. The ski resort, the local ski resort, didn't even open up this year because they didn't have enough snow until February, so they didn't even bother opening. But we've made up for it in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, if you're going to do this and you're going to work by yourself, you're going to like your own company. Because during the winter when it's cold and miserable, I can go days without seeing anybody. Sure. So here's the north wall with the horn and the stuff, and then you can't see because I have these display towers set up, but here it is. So there's the office space and where my kind of a little apartment. I've got a little apartment kind of up front. It's 30 by 60. It's got 2 bathrooms in it, and I pay the rent. The rent is $800 a month, and I spend about another. It averages about another $250 a month for the utilities and stuff. So I'm spending about $1,200 a month average. I finesse that. I don't just push that through. I finesse that a little bit. I got a pretty good deal on these ones. I got them. I picked. A lot of it has to do with picking the good horseshoes. You want the horseshoes that are just the right thickness. It makes them turn out a lot better. That one's deflecting a little bit. It's going to be a little bit off, but Not enough that anybody's going to notice. Or more. To mitigate the deflection, you want to use a short drill bit. Use a shorter drill bit. You won't get near the deflection when you do this. Get your work up close to where you're drilling. I got a lot of drill bit hanging out there, so it's flexing. My drill bit could use a sharpen too. That would help. You guys are learning so much stuff this morning. Six by 6 meters. So let's see, 3.5 feet, 6 times. So it's 25. Yeah, it's about 30 feet square. So it's about half the size of this one, or a little less. Oh, there went my hat racks are done cooking. I heard the dinger go off. If you like the content, if you want to support, subscribe, go watch some of my videos. Go watch some of my videos. Go over to the Etsy store and just like some stuff. You don't have to buy anything. Just hit the link in the description and just go like some stuff. That kind of helps me. It makes me feel good. It feels like I'm not wasting my time doing these live streams because they don't pay anything. These live streams don't pay a dang thing. So I make virtually no money on them. So it's not like I'm making a ton of money on the. It's not like I'm making a ton of money on the thing anyway. Where did the gloves go to? Put them down someplace. Don't want to use my welding gloves for this because I get the linseed oil on them and then they don't. They are not good. That's not good to get linseed oil on your welding gloves. They're just a little warm, everybody. Can you see that linseed flashing off of those? Oh, knife making. Yeah, that's a hard business to make any money in it. There's so many guys doing it now. It's really a hard. I make a lot of knives, but I would never just try to make a living making knives. They're labor intensive. It is so. Knives are really labor intensive. It makes this look downright easy. Yeah. Well, making knives is good, and you learn a lot making knives. You learn about tooling and steel. It's a good hobby, but if you want your hobby to make you a little extra money, do the knives and something else. I probably do, I don't know, 100, 150 knives a year now. I used to do 400 or 500 knives a year, but I don't do that many anymore. There's like five. I was the only knife maker in Cody, Wyoming for years and years, and now there's now there's a dozen of them, thanks to Forged in Fire. Everybody decided they want to try making knives. Well, this is kind of art. I mean, there's definitely a component of the artwork in this, right? I mean, it's not like everybody could build one of these. Yeah. And I hate doing custom order knives. I hate it. It is I very rarely do it anymore. Custom. I'm too busy doing this stuff to mess around with that. But those turned out pretty good. Look at them. Thank you. All right, everybody. I got to take a little break. I'm gonna set up. I've got to do a whole bunch more of these. I got to do another bunch of these, and I got to go get the material out from the stack and everything. So I will be coming back live here in a few minutes. So subscribe and you get the notification bell, and when I come back on here in a little bit, we can talk more. But I gotta make a couple of phone calls, and I gotta go get the material out of the stack out here outside, and it'll take me a little bit. But if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe, please follow. If you really want to support, go to the Etsy store. It's Cody Iron Works. There's a link in my bio. And go like some stuff. You don't have to buy anything, but if you just went and like some stuff, that would be great. All right, everybody. If I don't see you later, have a great Wednesday. Thanks for joining in. And we try to do this. I try to do this a lot. So have a great, peaceful, great day. Thanks, everybody.